Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into Spanish inheritance law today. Specifically, what we've learned from MCHM Abogados.
Oh, yeah. They seem like a pretty interesting firm.
They are, actually. They're members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Andalusia.
Okay.
And they work all across Spain, so they definitely know their stuff.
Well, and with inheritance, I mean, these are big decisions people are making.
Exactly. And especially if you're thinking about your future in Spain, you really need to understand how this all works. So that's what we're going to try to do, break it all down. The first thing to know, two main paths for inheritance in Spain: testamentary succession and intestate succession.
Sounds complicated already.
It's actually pretty straightforward. It all comes down to whether there's a will or not.
Okay, so a will or no will. Got it.
Right. So with testamentary succession, the deceased has a valid Spanish will. It's basically their roadmap. They decide who gets what.
So, like, I could say, my vacation home in Marbella goes to my spouse.
Exactly. Or you could say, I want my niece to have my antique watch collection.
Oh, wow. And my nephew gets the car.
Yep, that's specific. Plus, you can include instructions for asset management and even decide who would be guardian for any minor children.
That makes sense, but what happens if I change my mind?
You can actually change or revoke a Spanish will right up until you, well,
Pass away.
yeah. So you have that flexibility.
Wow, that's good to know. It gives you that peace of mind that things will be taken care of the way you want.
Okay, so what happens if there's no will?
That's where intestate succession comes in.
Okay.
Spanish law basically has a set of rules about how your assets get divided up.
So it's not like I could just leave everything to my best friend. My kids would still get something.
Right. There's this concept called legitima in Spanish law.
Legitimate.
Yeah, it basically guarantees a portion of the estate to certain heirs, no matter what your will says, usually direct descendants and spouses.
So even if I wanted to leave everything to charity.
Your children would still inherit a part of it. It's designed to protect their interests.
Interesting. So having a will doesn't mean complete control.
Well, not necessarily. But it definitely gives you more say in things.
Okay, so legitima, that's something I'm not really familiar with. That seems important to know about.
It is. It's one of those things that can be a bit of a surprise if you're used to, having more freedom with your will.
Right.
Like, let's say you have children.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just leave all your assets to your friend, even if you have a will.
Because of legitima.
Exactly. That portion is automatically reserved for your kids. It's the law.
So it's like a built-in safety net.
You could say that. It's a way for the Spanish legal system to make sure certain heirs are protected.
Got it. So even though a will doesn't give you complete control, it seems like it prevents a lot of potential headaches for your loved ones.
Absolutely. It can really simplify the whole process and avoid those legal challenges that can come up if there's no will.
Because I imagine that could get pretty messy.
Oh, it definitely can. It can drag on, cost a lot of money for the family to sort out.
And that's where proactive estate planning comes in.
Exactly. Thinking ahead, getting things in order.
Right. So we've got a basic idea of these two paths, with a will and without a will, and this legitimate concept.
Yeah.
What are some other things people should keep in mind when planning their estate?
Well, there are a lot of benefits to planning ahead. Not just about who gets what, but also about managing those assets in a smart way.
Like what?
Things like minimizing taxes, making sure your wishes are followed even if you become incapacitated. And we should probably talk about digital assets, too. That's a whole other thing these days.
Right, because that's not something people always think about.
It's easy to overlook, but it's becoming more and more important. So yeah, there's a lot to consider.
Okay, let's dive into some of those details then. First up, taxes. Everyone wants to know about minimizing those, right? How does inheritance tax work in Spain?
Well, in Spain, the inheritance tax is actually on the beneficiaries, not the estate itself.
Oh, okay. So like whoever's inheriting the money or property, they're the ones who pay the tax.
Exactly. And the rates, well, they can vary a lot.
I bet. Depending on what?
A few things, like your relationship to the deceased, how much you're inheriting, and the region.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned regional differences before. That's important, right?
Yeah.
Like what if someone has properties in different parts of Spain?
Huge difference. Imagine you inherit a place in Andalusia, right?
Okay.
As a direct descendant, you might get big tax breaks. Maybe even pay nothing.
Wow, really?
Depends on the value, of course.
Yeah.
But then you inherit something similar in Catalonia.
Yeah.
Taxes could be way higher.
So you're saying if you've got assets spread around Spain, planning gets even trickier.
Exactly. And that's where, firms like MCHM Abogados,
Right.
they can really help you navigate that, figure out how to, minimize the tax burden for your heirs.
Smart. Okay. So we've got wills, we've got this whole legitimate thing, and taxes. Anything else we should be thinking about?
Well, what if your will doesn't cover everything? Like, what happens if you can't make decisions for yourself anymore?
Right, because a will only kicks in after you're gone.
Yeah.
What about if you're, say, incapacitated?
That's where you need things like powers of attorney.
Ah, powers of attorney.
You choose someone you trust. They make decisions if you can't.
So it's like a backup plan for decision-making.
Yeah, exactly. And there are different types. Some just cover specific things like finances. Others are broader. Healthcare, legal matters, the whole 9 yards.
I can see how that'd be especially important for expats.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine you're in the hospital, can't travel, need someone to pay bills back home.
Yeah.
Power of attorney makes that so much easier.
It's all about thinking ahead.
Exactly. What if this happens? What if that happens?
Gotta have a plan.
Speaking of which, digital assets. Can't forget those.
Oh, right. Digital assets. That's a good one.
People forget about that stuff. Social media, email, online banking.
Cryptocurrency wallets even.
Oh, yeah, all that. What happens to it when you're gone?
Yeah, good point.
Used to be all about physical stuff, but nowadays, digital life. Just as important. Sentimental value, financial value, all of it.
So how do you handle that then? Make sure your digital assets are taken care of the way you want.
Digital estate planning. Got to be specific. How are your online accounts, your data, going to be managed?
After your death? Or if you become incapacitated?
Right. Inventory of your digital assets, designate digital executors, think about legacy contacts for certain accounts.
It's like a separate will for your online life almost.
Kind of, yeah. And it's changing all the time. So yeah, you really got to stay informed. Talk to legal experts who know this stuff inside and out.
I was reading an article the other day about a family who had no clue their dad had all this cryptocurrency tucked away online.
Oh, no.
They couldn't access any of it. He didn't leave any instructions.
See, that's exactly why you need this. Subscriptions, photos, videos, social media. It's part of your legacy.
It's crazy how much of our lives is online now. Got to protect that too.
Absolutely. Might seem overwhelming, but take it step by step. Get the right guidance. That's what MCHM Abogados is for, right?
They can help make sense of it all.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered wills, legitima, taxes, powers of attorney, and even digital assets.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Makes you realize estate planning is more than just a will.
Oh, for sure. It's about looking at everything. Your assets, your wishes, what your loved ones need, the whole picture.
Before we move on, we talked about MCHM Abogados and how they really focus on client satisfaction. What does that actually look like in practice with estate planning?
Well, it seems like they're all about open communication, building that relationship with their clients.
Okay.
Really taking the time to understand your situation, family dynamics, goals, concerns, all of it.
So it's not just filling out forms and legalese.
No. It's about having those conversations, figuring out what works for you, making sure you feel heard.
That makes sense. It's a big deal, right? Your legacy, your family.
Absolutely. And that's what they seem to get. It's sensitive. They approach it in a way that puts the client first.
I like that. Okay, so we've gone from traditional wills to all this digital stuff. Estate planning in Spain is clearly pretty involved. But before we wrap up, what's the biggest misconception people have about estate planning?
That's a good question. I think people think it's only for the wealthy or for when you're about to retire.
Yeah, I can see that.
But it's really for anyone who has assets, anyone who wants to protect their loved ones, no matter how old you are or how much money you have.
It's like that saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Exactly. You just never know what's going to happen. Having a plan in place, it just makes things so much easier for everyone if something happens to you.
And speaking of loved ones, what advice would you give to families who might be going through inheritance issues, disagreements, that kind of thing?
Talk to each other, honestly. So much of this comes from not understanding each other, not being clear about what the deceased wanted.
Right.
And emotions run high. It's tough. But you gotta have empathy. Be willing to compromise.
And if they can't work it out on their own,
get a mediator. Talk to a lawyer, someone neutral who can explain things and help everyone find a solution.
Makes sense. So even though estate planning can seem complicated, it's really about being proactive, protecting yourself and your family.
Yeah.
Making things as smooth as possible for everyone.
Exactly. Peace of mind, clarity, security. That's what it's all about.
Well said. Now, we've talked a lot about MCHM Abogados, and it seems like they offer a lot of services in this area. What would you say they're particularly good at? Something that might be especially relevant for our listener.
Well, they seem to really know their stuff when it comes to international inheritance. They've got a whole team that focuses on those tricky cross-border cases.
Yeah, those can get pretty complicated, can't they? Different countries, different laws.
Exactly. Think about it. Someone owns property in Spain, but they're from somewhere else. Their family is spread all over the world. You've got different legal systems, different taxes.
It's a real mess.
It can be, but MCHM abogados, they can handle it. They know how to make sure everything's done right, and they can help minimize those tax issues, even across borders.
That's a huge help, especially for people with international ties.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of the stress out of it.
Right. And they're also up to speed on all those European succession regulations, which can be important too, especially if you're moving around or have assets in different EU countries.
So if our listener is thinking about all of this, what's the one thing they should really take away from our deep dive today?
Don't wait to plan your estate. It's not just for the rich or for when you're old. It's for everyone. If you've got assets, if you want to take care of your family, do it now.
Don't put it off.
Exactly. Get the ball rolling. The sooner the better.
And if you need help,
reach out to the experts. MCHM Abogados, they can guide you through it.
absolutely. They've got all the information on their website, phone number, email address, all that.
Yeah, check them out. Get your questions answered.
Well, we've covered a lot today, from wills and legitima to digital assets and international inheritance. It's been a great deep dive.
It has.
Hopefully everyone feels a bit more informed about how inheritance works in Spain, and they're ready to start planning for their future.
That's the goal.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time.